The discovery. In a distant corner of the war-ravaged Andromeda galaxy, an uneasy peace held sway between the exalted Zorgax Imperium and the Free Worlds Alliance. For generations, the genetically engineered war beasts of the Zorgax had struck terror into the hearts of free peoples. Towering killing machines of fang and claw and brutality, the Zorgax soldiers were relentless, implacable foes. Captain Elara Vance, her face lined by years and the cares of command, gazed pensively at the readings scrolling across the Deliverance's view screen. She and her science vessel had been dispatched to this remote sector to study the aftermath of the Great Zorgax War, to chronicle the scars it left behind on planets and peoples alike. "Captain, you need to see this." Her first officer's normally unflappable voice held a note of shock. "Sensors are picking up life signs on the surface of Karshan Prime. But that's impossible. It was devastated by the Zorgax in the last days of the war." Elara felt a thrill of excitement tinged with trepidation. If survivors had somehow clung to life amid the poisoned wastes of Karshan, it would be a monumental discovery. She met her first officer's gaze, seeing her own thoughts reflected there. Hope, fear, curiosity. The driving need to know that had propelled them both into the uncharted dark of space. "Take us into low orbit, Commander Reeves, and ready a landing party. I'm going down there." Harsh winds lashed at Elara's envirosuit as she stepped out of the lander onto the blasted hellscape that had once been a thriving world. Twisted wrecks of great Zorgax warships protruded from viscous sludge that had once been oceans. Nothing should be alive here, she thought grimly. As they approached the source of the life readings, weapons drawn against the treacherous landscape, Elara abruptly signaled her team to halt. There, sprawled in a pool of dark ichor, its fanatically faithful, ghosts of war. In the stark white glare of the Deliverance's med bay, Dr. Mira Patel fought to save the broken creature that had once been a proud Zorgax warrior. His massive body was racked by 1,000 wounds, his hide seared by the toxic poisons that had devoured his homeworld. Mira's hands moved with brisk precision, stripping away the soldier's battered armor to reveal livid scars and the ghastly, labored rise and fall of his barreled chest. She worked with a determined frown, blocking out the mutters of dismay and distrust from some of the crew. Elara watched through the observation window, her thoughts roiling. Everything she had been taught, every hard experience of the long, bitter war, told her this was madness. To bring one of the Imperium's feigned horrors onto her ship, to expend precious resources on saving it, it went against all reason. And yet, some part of her recoiled at leaving any creature to suffer and die alone on that haunted hellscape. If we abandon compassion, even for our enemies, how are we any better than the Imperium? A discreet cough at her shoulder broke her reverie. "Captain, may I have a word?" Commander Rees looked as troubled as Elara felt. He leaned in close, his voice low and urgent. "The crew is on edge about our guest, having a Zorgax on board." Elara met his eyes, willing him to understand. "What would you have me do, Ely? We're not butchers or torturers. If we treat a helpless being as nothing more than an enemy, then we become no better than what we fight against." Reeves sighed, the tension not quite leaving his shoulders. "I know, Captain, but that doesn't make it easy. A lot of our people still have scars from the war, in body and soul." Elara turned back to the window, watching Mira work with tireless skill to piece the broken Zorgax back together. "I know," she said softly, "but that's exactly why we have to do this. If there's ever to be a real peace, it has to start somewhere. Even with small acts of mercy." Awakening. It was the pain that dragged Carex back to bitter consciousness. Pain had been his constant companion from his first breath in the spawning pools of Zorgax, the lash that drove him to excel, to savage, to survive. But this was a new agony, a searing fire that ripped through nerves and circuits and reinforced bone. He thrashed against the restraints holding him, a warning growl rumbling up from his chest. Where was he? The last fractured memory was of the ruined plains of Karshan, the final order from his alphas. Hold the line. To the last breath. And then the stinging bite of toxic rain, the ominous groan of damaged warships sinking into sludge, and then nothing. Easy, easy there. The voice was gentle, light, warm. So unlike the guttural snarls of his pack commanders, Carrax's slitted eyes snapped open, fixing on the small white figure leaning over him. A human. He lunged against the bonds, jaws snapping, a roar of fury and fear filling the air. "You are safe. No one will harm you." The human's voice remained infuriatingly calm, her strange dark eyes full of some flickering emotion he couldn't name. "My name is Dr. Mira Patel. We found you wounded on your homeworld. You're aboard our ship, the Deliverance." Through the red haze of pain and rage, the words seeped into Carrax's mind. He was on a human ship, at the mercy of the soft, weak creatures the Imperium had fought to destroy. A whine of distress and confusion escaped his throat. Why would they save him, an enemy? What new torture was this? As if sensing his fear, the human doctor held up a small device. An image appeared, shimmering in the air. Carrax flinched, then stared in shock. It was his own face, but transformed. The livid scars and seeping wounds were gone, replaced by new, healthy growth. What had they done to him? An uneasy truce. Captain Ilara Vance stood before the Zorgax called Carrax, meeting his baleful gaze without flinching. The creature had recovered with startling speed under Dr. Patel's diligent care, his enhanced biology knitting torn flesh and shattered bone. He towered over her now, a hulking mass of muscle and bladed plates, and barely contained menace. "Why?" The word was a grating rumble, forced out through fangs never meant for speech. "Why save me, human? What do you want?" Ilara chose her words with care, keenly aware of the coiled tension in the Zorgax's frame. "We want peace, Carrax. The war is over. Your Imperium signed the accords." A snarl of derision. "Peace? You think a scrap of paper matters to a Zorgax? We live for war, for the glory of the Imperium. We do not stop until all bow before us, or until we draw our last breath." Ilara shook her head, a glint of challenge in her eyes. "And yet, here you stand, on a human ship, your life saved by human hands. Maybe it's time to question the things you've been taught." Carrax's talons flexed, the keen edges scraping against the deck, but he made no move to attack, some flicker of doubt, of curiosity, warring with ingrained hatred in his eyes. "You are weak," he grated out. "Soft, you should have let me die." "Compassion is not weakness." Ilara's voice was soft, implacable. "We believe all life has value, even a life so different from our own." As Carrax lapsed into brooding silence, Ilara could almost feel the weight of eyes on her back, the mistrustful glares of her crew. She knew bringing the Zorgax on board had strained already frayed nerves, reopening old wounds from the long and bitter war. "I'm not asking you to trust him," she had told them. "I'm asking you to trust me, and the ideals we swore to uphold when we donned these uniforms." But as Ilara left Carrax to his churning thoughts, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were balanced on the edge of a knife, but the fragile peace they had bought with so much blood hung in the balance. Would this one act of mercy be enough to tip the scales? Or would old hatreds, old scars, drag them all back into the abyss of war? In the dim confines of the quarters they had assigned him, Carrax paced, a caged beast in mind and body. A common enemy. The attack came without warning. One moment, the Deliverance cruised sedately through the star-flecked void, her crew going about their duties with the muted efficiency of long practice. The next, alarms blared, the deck shuddering beneath the impact of weapons fire. "Report," Captain Vance barked, gripping the arms of her command chair as she stared at the threat displays. "Unknown ship, Captain," Tactical responded, voice taut with strain. "Configuration matches known Zorgax designs, but it's not broadcasting Imperium codes." Ilara's face hardened. "Rogue Zorgax here." The war had left many scars and loose ends, factions who refused to accept the armistice, zealots who still clung to dreams of conquest. "Shields up, arm all weapons." Hail them. But even as the orders left her lips, Elara knew it was futile. The sleek, predatory lines of the Zorgak's ship spoke of a vessel built for war, for swift, merciless strikes. The Deliverance was a ship of science and exploration, lightly armed. They were outmatched. In his quarters, Carrick stiffened as the alarms shrilled, his keen senses instantly alert. He recognized the pitch and timbre of those weapons, the searing plasma lances favored by his kind. But why would the Imperium attack this insignificant human vessel? He found himself moving before conscious thought could take hold, driven by some impulse he couldn't name. New loyalties warred with old conditioning as he raced through the ship's corridors, ignoring the startled cries and leveled weapons of the human crew. He burst onto the bridge in a spray of sparks and smoke, consoles shattering under the merciless barrage. Elara whirled to face him, her expression a mix of shock and grim understanding. "You know that ship," she said, not a question. Carrick's growled assent, talons flexing. "Renegades. They do not follow the Imperium's commands. They live only for the hunt, the kill." Ilara's eyes met his, a silent plea and command in their depths. "Help us, Carrax. You know their ways, their weaknesses. Fight with us. Prove that the Zorgax can be more than the Imperium made you." For a long taut moment, Carrax wavered, the weight of a lifetime's conditioning, a species' cruel history, pressing down on him. Then, slowly, purposefully, he inclined his great head. "I am Carrax," he grated out. "I fight for the Deliverance." As the renegade ship bore down on them, Carrax took his place at the tactical station, his talons dancing over the controls with a strange, savage grace. But Carrax knew he could not stay. The Deliverance had shown him a glimpse of a different life, a different way of being. But he was still Zorgax, with all the baggage and bloody history that entailed. He needed to find his own path, to reconcile the warring impulses within himself. On the eve of the Deliverance's return to Alliance space, Carrack sought out Captain Vance in her ready room. She looked up from her reports, a knowing sadness in her eyes. "You're leaving." Again, not a question. Carrax inclined his head. "I must. Your crew has shown me possibilities I had never considered. Honor in mercy. Strength in unity. But I cannot simply shed the skin of what I was. I must find my own way, my own purpose." Elara stood, extending a hand. After a moment's hesitation, Carrax engulfed it in his own massive paw, careful not to crush her fragile bones. "You will always have a place here, Carrax. Always. But I understand. Go, and know that you carry a piece of us with you, as we will carry a piece of you." In the shuttle bay, Dr. Patel and Commander Reeves stood with a small knot of crew members, come to see Carrax off. There were no cheers this time, no grand fanfare, just solemn nods, respectful salutes. A warrior's farewell. As the shuttle hatch sealed behind him, Carrax felt a strange lightness, an unfamiliar sense of hope. He did not know what the future held, where his path would lead. Back to the shattered remains of the Imperium, to lead his kind to a new way. Out into the uncharted void, to carve his own destiny among the stars. One thing he knew, he would not forget the lessons learned aboard the Deliverance. The strength of compassion, the power of choice. The knowledge that even the most bitter of enemies could find common ground when they looked beyond the surface to the beating heart beneath. In a distant corner of the war-ravaged Andromeda galaxy, a lone shuttle streaked away into the infinite dark, carrying a being that was no longer quite Zorgax, but not quite anything else either. A being with a new purpose, a new path, a new hope. The end.